Hello, welcome. Just gonna wait for Michael to hop on and then we'll get started with our first live series video thing. Hello, Tim. Welcome. Just waiting for Michael to hop on. Hello. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the very first YLI youth conversation on IG Live. My name is Abby, the social media intern for YLI. Just waiting for Michael to hop on so we can get started. Happy February 1st. Happy Black History Month. Welcome. This is so exciting. All right. Hey, welcome. We're just waiting for Michael to hop on so we can start our conversation. This is the YLI Youth Combos on IG Live. Michael's here. All right, let's get this going. Hello.
Hello. Hi, Abby.
Hi, Michael. Thanks for being here.
Of course. Thanks for having me. This is exciting.
Of course, I know. I'm so hyped. I was literally just saying how excited I am to get started on this.
Yeah, this is the best part of my day. So this has been on my mind for a while.
Same.
Like class was not it. Like meetings later, not gonna be it.
Nope.
I to work later. No, this is the best part.
100% agree. 100% agree. Um, Thank you for being here. Thanks for everyone who's here. Just for people who are just joining, this is the first of many YLI Live Youth Combos. Um, and today I'm here with the one and only Michael, who, amongst many other things, is a co-host of Policywise podcast. You can find them on all social media channels at Policywise Pod. Just got to plug in. There
Gotta do
might
that.
be like some really cool graphics that I don't know some random social media intern makes.
Abby, come
Um,
on.
I
Come
mean,
on. Abby makes our fantastic marketing
uh,
materials, all color
oh,
coded and everything.
stop.
Thanks,
Oh
Abby.
my goodness. Okay. Well, enough about me. Let's just go into it. Thank you everyone for hopping on. Today we're going to be talking about lots of different stuff. This is really just um a time for us
Sorry.
to converse, talk about youth experience, youth voice, all the good
Yeah.
stuff. So just to start us off, today is February 1st, first day
Oh
of
yeah.
Black History Month. Um, Obviously, the past year, 2020, and even now we're like 1 month into 2021, and it's already, there's just so much going on all the time.
hmm
So what are some conversations that you hope really encircle around Black History Month in the current context? You know, we have new Biden administration. Black Lives Matter just got
hmm
nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize. Obviously, the 2020 BLM summer protests, post-Capitol insurrection. Like, there's all these things. Like, how do we balance that in conversations around Black History Month?
Well, first, it's tough. Okay. I'm sure everybody listening can think about how tough it is to keep track of everything that's going on. Like to think that last Wednesday, I think it was last Wednesday, was the only regular Wednesday of January. Like we had a Capitol insurrection, we had an impeachment, like we had
Oh
a
my gosh.
presidential inauguration. Like there's so much going on. So that's
Right.
the first thing is like recognizing that it's super hard to keep track of everything. Um, my personal hope, and I think anybody who knows me knows, like I'm wearing my Black Students in Public Policy shirt. Like my hope is that Black History Month can actually be centered in making concrete change,
Mm,
so that we don't, you know, uh, essentially just use this as a time to post and act like we're with with the people, and then just forget about it during the whole rest of the year. Like February is the shortest month of the year. We know that. So let's take this time to actually focus on making a difference for the Black community instead of just posting something that's going to last 24 hours or even a few weeks. And it's just going to go out of fashion. I think that that's the one thing that social media has kind of done. Like trends come in, and there's a time where um, I could think back even 4 or 5 years ago, where if you post a bunch of stuff that's, Black centric or all about activism, then people will be like, why are you bringing all this to social media? Now it's like cool, right? It's the
Mm,
trend. And we have to actually take, in my opinion, I got to take a trend and be like, okay, this is going to be cool for a month and y'all are going to care for a month. So let's make some actual
mm,
concrete policy changes. But realistically, we should be caring all year.
right. Yeah. Awesome. Thank you for starting us off so strong like that. Um,
You came in with the question. I didn't do
oh my
anything.
God. Okay. Oh my gosh. Just for everyone who's only now hopping on, I'm here. I'm Abby. I use she, her pronouns. I'm here with Michael, co-host of Policywise Pod, amongst other things. And we're just here talking about youth experience, life right now. This is the first of many IG Live conversations that YLI is beginning to host. And thank you all for being here. So going back to our conversation, yeah,
Hmm.
I personally have noticed just like folks who in the past like have been pretty silent in terms of like doing like anti-racist work have just
Yeah.
now started their form of activism is now like social media, like it feels very performative and stuff. What are some of the ways that we can constructively push folks to go past just the reposting on their story?
Well, I think it's there's a lot of ways. So let me start off by saying that everybody's activism looks different. And so there's no real one way to take, your opinions and turn it into a certain type of activism.
Mhm.
I can't tell that to you. That's something you got to figure out. And so that's the first thing that I'd like to recognize. For some people, they don't want to post on social media because they feel like, it's not actually making a change. I actually
Mm,
empower that. Some people do post on social media because they feel like that's the only way. I'll say that there's probably more ways in which you can get involved than just that. It could be as simple as your day-to-day life, just recognizing some of the power that you have in your daily actions, and also just being an ally. Like it's that simple.
mm,
You don't have to be at the forefront. You don't have to be carrying the flag. And I think that all that people ask is for you to kind of hear them out and then carry out some of the ways in which you would like to create change in your day-to-day life. I'm not going to tell everybody my way of making change is through policy. I'm not going to, put that on everybody because policy making is hard. But it also takes a lot of time and passion, etc. But for some people, it's doing art. It's showing the way that you feel through an art form. It's
mm,
singing, it's dancing, it's even, some people love history. It's even going back into history and telling others about what has happened in the past. I'd say that there's so many ways to get involved, and to kind of join the fight and for equity and equality. And I think that some of the easiest ways that some people can get involved is to see what legislation is popping out. Call your congressional representative, call your state legislative representatives, call your mayor, ask what you can do. If you see something happening in your school, talk to your teacher and be like, hey, this is a problem. Talk to your principal, be like, hey, why did either this happen if you consider it to be anti-black or anti-diversity, or even try to come up with ways in which you can take spaces that are maybe less diverse and either bring in more diverse voices or find a way to make sure that perspective is articulated in whatever space. An example I could use, I actually teach, and so I noticed that neither of my classes have any Black students, and I was like,
mm,
it is what it is. But trying to make sure that they don't lose perspective and that they don't lose information because of that lack of diversity. And not only within my classroom, because it's easier for me to do it because I'm like, oh, I'm Black. I could just make sure that I, say that. But for, maybe some other instructors or other professors, it just making a note and being like, hey, there's a lack of diversity here, and we just need to make sure that whatever perspective that needs to be included is included in the conversation. That
yeah.
was a really wordy answer. I'm sorry.
No, that was so good. Um, yeah, man, I really, especially just like being in like predominantly white learning it like spaces, like educational spaces,
Hmm.
there's definitely part of the work is just like putting it into the conversation, Like yeah, I felt that, especially online. It's hard online.
Yeah, it is really hard online. It's something that just reminded me, is sometimes holding your ground because it could be tough. It could be really tough.
Mm,
My background is in student leadership for people who don't know, and I was consistently the only Black person in a room. And it
Mm.
took me a while to get used to saying something like, we need increased diversity and say it with a straight face and say it seriously and look at everybody in the eye and just be like, I'm going to be serious about this. I'm not going to back down. And it takes a while to do that because it's scary. It's scary to bring up something people don't want to, talk about. Might be an elephant in the room.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, awesome. For everyone who's just joining us, I'm here with Michael Wiafe, and we're talking about, well, right now we're talking about the positionality of Black History Month and kind of bringing up conversations around diversity in predominantly white spaces, especially educational spaces right now. So for Black History Month, YLI is really focusing on like studying reparations and how reparations plays into conversations, especially in current context with the new administration. What would reparations look like from the policy side?
Oh, there's so many ways it could look like. And this is really an evolving conversation, and it might look
Mhm.
different, for well, let me back up and say that there's a lot of different levels of policy. And so, you might talk about reparations in a city that had a very strong anti-Black history. You'd say that that city on its own needs to do something in order to make up for the past the past damages that occurred. And for people who don't know what reparations is, it's essentially a policy aimed at making up for a lot of the losses that were put on the backs of Black people, or you could put it in other contexts, whatever other group, but in this context for Black people, either through Jim Crow era laws, through racism, through slavery. There's a lot of levels into how all that history in the United States is actually still on our backs today. You can look at home ownership. There's still redlining in some parts of the country.
Mhm.
You could still see some schools that are segregated, right? Or some school districts that have all the Black students in one school and all the white students in another school. But I think, from my perspective, policy should be focused on those areas, not just focused, because I think a lot of people, when they think of reparations, they think of monetary, right? They think every
Mhm.
Black person gets $500. I think that's or every Black person gets 1,000, or every Black person gets 3,000. That's a very common way in which people think about reparations. I would challenge that and say that you could think about that instead as state-funded college scholarships, or let's say a state-funded down payment on a home, knowing that Black people weren't able to buy homes in the past, or Black people weren't able to attend colleges and universities. That's why there's HBCUs. You can also think about that in other forms. Hiring is a big one. Where there's been studies done. If you have a Black sounding name, or if you have your hair in a certain style, that you likely won't get the job. And so maybe even a state funded way to find people jobs, or expanded unemployment benefits. There's just so many ways to think about it, because there's just so much loss that has occurred from a racist history in the United States that's honestly still occurring till this day. But that we're talking about reparations. So I think that those are just some of the ways we could think about reparations, and the way that I would challenge to do it is policy. And some people might be like, why not money? And
Mhm.
my argument to that is because I don't think it's going to make as big of a difference as it needs to be made. Because I think that if we're really going to monetize how much damage from the past needs to go to individuals now, like we're talking a very complex calculation. And then we have to get into were you actually a descendant of slaves? Me personally, I'm an immigrant. I was born in Ethiopia, and I came here when I was a young child. Do I get reparations? And some people would say, no, you don't. And other people say, yeah, you do, because you still face the effects of the negative history, the racist history of the United States. So I think that, in order to take out some of those things that are really difficult to measure and kind of split up, you have to think about reparations in a more strategic way that's actually going to make a meaningful, long lasting difference for Black people.
Yeah, awesome.
Sorry, also a wordy answer.
No, oh my God, don't apologize. That was so good. Um, And I mean, so you talked about how there's all these different forms of like ways to get involved in activism. It like looks for different people or looks different for different people, and like the way that you approach it is through policy. Like that's what you're studying. That's
Mm-hmm.
what Policywise pod is about. Um, can you go into like kind of switching gears a little bit? Can you go into like how do you see policy as a way to institute like widespread change?
Oh yeah. So I actually think policy is the personally I think it's the best way to institute
Mm,
widespread change, and not only widespread on kind of a like a larger scale, but also long lasting.
mm,
A policy is usually, if a policy just got enacted, it's probably going to outlive us, unless it's reversed, unless it's done in a way that completely goes against other people who might take your place, or whoever made the policy. Let me also, put this in, is that all policy is a rule that a bunch of people came up together and said should be in place and have the power to actually put it in place. And so to kind of unravel that, you have to go through a very similar process. And I think not enough people recognize that every rule that has ever been set by the government can then be rescinded by the government, and
mm,
all it would take is a decision that's made. And even the way that policies get enacted, it's all people in the government who are staff, and so all the government is a group of people. And so it's the job of some people to try to go in there and make some change, which is what I hope to do at some point in my career, most of my career actually. And I think that it's a way to kind of influence what goes on, but also kind of put your signature on it and be like, okay, this law is now going to be in effect until a group of people come in and decide that it should no longer be in effect. The challenge with that is, and I would say this to anybody, the challenge with I think policy in general is that it only lasts as long as the people allow it to last. And so, an example might be Biden signing all the executive orders, basically undoing Trump's presidency, right? That's the
mm.
people not allowing it to last. And so, you kind of have to make sure that this momentum that you build with any policy change, that the ball keeps on rolling. That's why it's important to mentor others. That's why it's important to lift as you climb, because you have to recognize that you might be the person coming in and making all of these policy changes. But what it's going to take is people after you to continue the work that you started in order to continue making the difference that you wanted to make. Um, Maybe not the best show to quote, but one of my favorite shows is House of Cards. And something that one of the characters said is money is kind of like a nice, beautiful mansion. And policy is basically a brick building, right? It's you might be able to destroy the mansion in a hurricane. That brick building's gonna last until that there's a meaningful effort to destroy it. So that's the way I think about it. Is like, what, this is my way to kind of make a lasting change that hopefully will carry on to people who come after me and build upon the work that I did, instead of kind of building an empire that could be washed away out at sea. That's just my way of
Yeah.
seeing it, I guess.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's awesome. I see people commenting lift as you climb. That's powerful. Yeah. For those of you just joining us, I'm here with Michael, co-host of Policywise Pod. And we're just talking about life right now, policy,
Chopping it up.
the huge. I was telling Michael how I'm taking an intro to public policy class this semester, and like I just kind of might flex that I work on a policy podcast. I don't know, just might slip that in there.
I love it. Policywise pod, y'all. Check it out. Please flex. Please flex. You make it happen. You make it happen, Abby.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. So I mean, talking about Policywise has happened completely online, virtually, right? Like
Mhm.
from the yeah. So I mean, what was the inspiration behind Policywise, and how has it been producing a podcast entirely online? Like we've actually never met in person.
Yeah, actually, you're right. So okay, policy-wise started all the way back then. It was probably like June when we first had the conversations about policy-wise. It was when there were protests all across the country. Coronavirus was ravaging the nation. There was so much civil unrest, and it just felt like, as young people, there was no place for us to talk about it and talk about it in a way that would make meaningful changes. Young people were mostly part of the protests. When you see people protesting out there, it was mostly young people. When you see people on social media enraged, it was mostly young people that were driving this change. And so we were like, well, okay. So a group of us were basically like, okay, like, what are we gonna do in this time? We were discussing what we were gonna do. And then at a point, it was like, well, we could start off by talking about it. And let's talk about it in a public way, so that people can listen into the conversation and not only get young people to talk about policy in a meaningful way, but also get policy professionals to sit down and have a recorded conversation with young people to also learn their perspective and also, allow that perspective to be shared widely. And we could talk about really interesting stuff that happens. So it was back then when I actually called Demi and was like, because I first had the podcast idea and some of us discussed it, but I knew Demi from the past, and Demi was part of the conversation. I was like, okay, Demi would be the best co-host, and we work really well together. So Demi and I had a phone call, and we chatted it up, and we were just ranting about democracy and policy and other things that we nerd out about. And then we had the idea, and we went to an organizations that we work with. Actually, it was California Forward, that we initially went to and said, hey, we want to start a podcast. And California Forward said, we like the idea, but of course include our partners, the Youth Leadership Institute, which is also the partners in creating California Forward's Young Leaders Council. So that was kind of like how California Forward came in, how Youth Leadership Institute came in, how Demi and I came in. And we were kind of like, we want to start a podcast. And then it was actually YLI that was like, okay, we can make it happen. And here's some of the materials that we're going to need. And we knew that it was going to have to happen through Zoom. And Demi and I were like, what the heck are we going to do? Like, we're going to have to just like schedule it like that. And luckily YLI was helping us out with scheduling materials or recording materials, and some support from staff and some support from you. And we all came together to make it happen. So shout out Tim, shout out Jarrett, shout out Demi, Abby, the whole team that makes it happen. Because Policywise, honestly, it's a great podcast and a fantastic opportunity for young people to have initial conversations with people that they admire, people working in the same policy sector as they're interested in. And we were really hoping, I have so much more to say. I'm so sorry. we
No,
were
keep
really
going.
hoping, we were really hoping that it was going to be a way to get all of these young people who are so interested in policy, who are now getting like introduced to like, how are we going to create change? What are we going to do? And to kind of get that energy and be like, you know what, Demi, you and I kind of know how to talk policy. We've been doing it for a while. And let's try to make something where other young people who maybe don't know as much about policy or don't know, the different sectors within policy can come out and be like, hey, this episode really interests me. Maybe I should go in this direction. So every episode actually has a call to action where we kind of tell young people and we ask the guests, what direction do you want to be headed in? Or what do you think young people should do in order to get involved on this issue? And I think it's been great so far. We've had fantastic episodes. We had Shirley Weber back when she was an assembly member, advocating for a prop. She's now our Secretary of State, first Black Secretary of State, got sworn in on Friday. So we had that episode way back when with Isaac. We've had, former state secretaries. We've had presidents of nonprofits and CEOs of nonprofits. We've had people from agencies. We've had advocates. We've had, just young people, and we're still coming out with fantastic episodes. The only thing I would ask is that people tell us what they want to see. What do you want to hear? I don't want to open the bag too much and tell y'all what's coming, because I'm telling you it's fire.
Mm-hmm.
For the next few months, like we already got it rolling, and it's just going to be fantastic from here on out. And I think the episodes are just going to keep on getting better. The perspective is going to keep on getting better. And I'm so excited for the future of Policywise.
Oh,
That was so
same.
long.
No, that was so good. I was also just like kind of fangirling over it too, like thinking of all the like recordings that y'all have coming up, just like
You
you don't
know what
even
we have
know.
coming up. You already
You
know.
like ah. So we're coming up on a half hour, and
Already?
I know that you have like literal classes to teach. But before we go, we're talking about policy wise, talking about the BLM protests this past summer, all of it during a pandemic,
Hmm.
all of it during a pandemic, and we're coming up on a year also of when everything was shut down. And
Yeah.
so, kind of just to sum up, like as youth are kind of moving through this new world of like online school,
Hmm.
really a lot of online, like having to figure out how to socialize online, what does it mean to lead when we're in this very weird space of like,
Oh
um,
yeah.
like isolation, but also like all these like constant like current events that are happening around us, all these unprecedented times that are like
Yeah.
constantly happening. Like, what does it mean to be a youth leader right now?
Yeah, no, you bring up a really good point. We literally have like a historical event every week.
Every week.
Sometimes multiple in 1 week, just sitting in class. Okay, people are storming the Capitol now. Okay.
Right.
I think leadership looks different for everyone, and it's going to be based on your skills and based on the people that you're around. Leadership could be the person that's, with a microphone in front of a large crowd sharing their thoughts, but it's also the person who just puts into a group chat, hey, y'all, come to this. Like,
Mm.
it could look as great or as small as people want it to be, but it's still leadership. So let me just put that in there. No one member of the team is greater than another member. Even if you just got to know that their job is different. Like the CEO of an organization, and somebody who's maybe an analyst near the bottom, they're still putting in around 40 hours of work a week. So, it's just that their job's a little different. Everybody needs to be doing something else in order for the machine to run. But I think now it's tougher, especially, yeah, I came from student leadership. So especially for the student leaders, like they're doing all the work and none of the fun. Like leadership used to be
Mm.
fun. Now it's like, ugh. But it's still important. And I think,
Mhm.
as long as what you're doing is making a change in I see in the chat out of the corner of my eye, equity is key. No, you're right. As long as you're making a change, you're focusing on the people who need it the most. And really what leadership to me is either doing something nobody wants to do or bringing up something new or organizing a group of folks. There's so many different ways it can look. And so I think, especially in this online environment, I actually think that we have to utilize social media networks, utilize your current networks, grow your current network, put out messages out there, throw events to people. Like there's so many ways in which you can build a new online virtual community that I think hopefully is going to last even longer, especially for young people now. You don't have to have a nice fancy position with a fancy title and have to wear a suit all day with the pin on the jacket. It's also the person who's building something for the greater good. And I think that looks different for everybody. The last thing I'll mention, I know we're coming up on time. The last thing I'll mention, I think, is like that the difference for me between, policy advocacy and policy activism. When for me, whenever I see people protesting out in the street, fighting for change and sharing their opinions and practicing activism in that way, to me, it has to be followed up by somebody who's part of that group who could then open the door, walk into the building, and be like, okay, now let's build a policy that's going to work for our people. you
Mm.
know uh let's put something together that's actually going to work, because I think a lot of people who, if you're against the protest, you might be like, oh, they're just creating noise, they're just creating noise. What you need is that noise to be on the outside and somebody on the inside being like, you hear that noise, they need change because whatever you're doing is not working, and I'm here to make it happen with you. And so it's going to need that partnership between policymakers and folks who can actually make that difference and the people pushing for the difference. And I think that there's sometimes a really strong disconnect between the two groups, and that's the kind of role that I hope to play in leadership, is being a bridge between the two and being like, I can talk policy all day, but we also got to talk about how policy hasn't been working for folks and need to
Mhm.
talk about the specifics to make it work for folks. So and take it however you will and create your own brand of leadership. And I think that your homegrown brand of leadership is always going to be the best. Don't try to be somebody else.
Mm.
I think that's the key.
Mm. Awesome. What a way to end. What a way to end. Thank you so much, Michael, for being here.
Thank
I'm
you.
Abby. I'm a social media intern at Wildeye, and I'm lucky enough to be able to be hosting these
The
Wildeye
best
live.
social media intern.
Oh, stop it. Oh my God.
All right, Abby. Well, thank you so much for having me.
Of course, of course. And thank you everyone for watching. I will see y'all next time.
Oh yeah. See you next time. Bye.
Bye.